Hello and welcome to another episode of the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Today we're joined by Brad Smith. He is a team lead at Hubspot. He's also a coach and course creator and a host at SDR Anonymous and many other things, I'm sure, as well. So, Brad, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Hitesh. Yeah, nice to see you both. Yeah, really well, thank you. Really well. It's great to be on the podcast and finally get the call up.
Awesome. He's been waiting in the wings. Um, I always like to start off with you kind of introducing yourself to our listeners, paint a little bit more color. Who is Brad Smith? How have you got to where you've got to? Because you've got a very impressive resume as well.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know how far you kind of want me to go back, but I guess I can talk about how I kind of got into tech, because I think
Yeah.
for a lot of people that can always be the kind of first point. And so yeah, I was at school, went to school grew up in kind of West Sussex way, just south of London, and went to Newcastle University. Have to admit, it's a very kind of fun city, and I think more socializing probably got done than a lot of university work. I studied economics and management there, and so always thought that kind of the career that was destined for me was, something in finance or wealth management, something like that. And that was always my plan, really. And I think when I kind of left university, kind of had that thought of like, do I really want to be sat, at a desk, probably just sat in a spreadsheet, clicking about all day long, and is that going to really suit my skill set and kind of what I enjoy? And actually, funny enough, one of my best mates, who's now in the RAF, so he's not even in tech anymore. But he had gone through this recruitment agency in London, and talked about this job in technology, which was completely kind of new to me. Excuse me. Yeah, Venetrix that was, and sort of Tara Jackson over there. And he was like, oh, the pay's great. The office has got loads of snacks. I get to wear jeans and trainers to the office, and I thought, that sounds like a bit of me. And so I thought at least I'd kind of try it out, to be honest. So got in touch and yeah, landed my first job in sales for a company called CloudSense, which are a kind of CPQ company. And yeah, it's great. Kind of was a BDR, SDR there. I can't remember my official title. It's slightly interchangeable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yeah, it was going really well. The company went through a little bit of a turbulent time, to say the least. And so my first job, I was actually made redundant. They sort of kind of called us in one morning and they decided to make all of the SDRs globally redundant, which wasn't ideal after a year in your dream as such. And then COVID hit, so it was sort of everything at once. And yeah, that said friend that helped me kind of get into technology, he was actually a company called Outreach, which is where I met Mr. Mick over here. And yeah, so had a coffee. I say a coffee. It was a Zoom chat with the VP over there, Tom, at the time. And that's kind of where I see my proper kind of career in tech really kind of starting. So yeah, kind of spent best part of 2 years there. Sort of worked my way up from the sort of SDR life, into SDR management. Was managed by like a really great kind of manager there called Caitlin, who sort of helped sort of progress me kind of through the ranks, really. And really loved it. Like loved SDRing, loved managing. But kind of knew, or at least thought, I don't know if this is necessarily true, that to really push on and get to a director level eventually, that I need to have closed a deal. I think it's hard to be a manager of people that are closing deals if you never closed the deal. That's how I thought about it. So I knew I kind of needed to leave. And so yeah, moved on to HubSpot. And yeah, kind of worked up from being an AE here, in our small business team. I kind of focus on the UK market. And then over the last couple of months now kind of in a team lead role, which is really exciting, and kind of helping sort of coach a few of the people on my team, and sort of helping the manager out as well. So yeah, a lot can happen in 3 years. But I think that's testament to tech and how quickly things kind of move, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's amazing. What an introduction. I feel like giving you a round of applause, but I don't want to distort the mic. Interesting career that you've had as well. And it's a classic move where people want to go from like SDR towards an AE function as well. and you've done it successfully because you've gone from SDR to leading the team through to AE and now being a player coach as well, which is tremendous to see. What are some of the skills that you felt were transferable from that move from, understanding the SDR world to the AE world? But then also, what were some of the gaps that you felt were more noticeable?
Yeah, and it's a really good question because I think people think it's this wildly different job, and I think there seems to be the commonly accepted sort of hypothesis that it's completely different. I remember when I first joined HubSpot, one of the things my manager sort of said to me is, look, pipeline solves all problems. And coming from an SDR position, your role is just to obviously generate pipeline. It typically was for other people, not yourself. So I think that kind of prospecting motion and really focusing on booking meetings is really beneficial. And I think in today's world, and this might have changed over the last few years, but you need to be producing your own pipeline. You can't rely on inbound leads or your SDR or anything like that. So I think that's been a skill that I've really managed to kind of transfer across. I think I probably shouldn't be saying this on a podcast, but I think when you're an SDR, there might be what's the best way to put it? You probably don't think about the quality of the meeting you're booking, let's say. It's about booking the meeting, right? I think that's something you think about much more as an AE is, okay, who am I targeting? If I do get through to them, do I actually want to speak to them? And are they potentially going to spend some money buying my solution? That's kind of where you start to think about it. So I think that's probably how it's slightly different. I think any gaps is it's, the sales process can be really challenging. I think the difference between, an SDR, getting some surface level pain, booking it in, it's not saying it's an easy task, but it's a simpler task. I think really for me, the gap was around the discovery call. And look, I'm a year and a half in. I definitely still haven't nailed how to do a discovery. And that's taken a lot of time to kind of work on, just to really understand how you can make sure you're really digging into the pain, understanding, how much of a priority this is for them, to make sure that, realistically you're focusing your time on the right opportunities, I guess.
Amazing.
Brad, I'm happy to have you here, as you know. It's gonna be good fun. During those 3 years between your first role as an SDR to essentially managing a closing team, what have you seen changed in terms of the SDRing processes throughout those 3 years? What's the main difference?
Absolutely, and I think this is quite topical, Mick, because of all the recent announcements from Google and Yahoo. I don't know if you saw them, and I think that's probably a good indication of where it has been changing, even if people haven't necessarily been paying attention. Where, when I first started out as an SDR, it was a volume game. You just blasted out loads of emails, make as many calls as you want. And ultimately, you didn't have to necessarily have the best script or the best cold calling abilities. 5 out of 20 times you'd maybe hit jackpot, right? Whereas I think now you just have to be super targeted around not only your ICP and who you're targeting, but really that messaging. Not only is it personalized, but is it really relevant? And I think there's so many tools out there now, whether it's your outreaches, your sales loft, any of the slightly cheaper solutions in the market as well. Every single SDR is getting the volume game. So these people, these VPs of sales or these finance directors that everyone's targeting are all receiving a ton of emails. Yeah. Most of the time, it's probably going to spam. 100% of the time, they're not opening them and they're probably deleting them straight away. So I think where it's really sort of evolved is people having to get much more targeted, much more multi-channel, and I think it has to be incredibly clear with the messaging and not kind of be too noisy with the messaging. It's really understand what pain you're trying to solve and go looking kind of for the people that actually have that pain.
Yeah. And you made an interesting point, which is, one of the benefits that you have of being an AE now or a player coach now is that you've done the SDR world, and that accountability on an AE now to be able to self-solve opportunities. You see it everywhere, whether you like it or not, you have to do it. And if you combine that with the recent announcement from Google and Yahoo, how do you think you're going to change your outreach from a prospecting perspective as someone who's an experienced SDR as well as now an experienced AE to be able to resonate? Because I anticipate you might be doing less volume of activity now, but probably higher quality. So what's that going to look like?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great question. And I think this is definitely the way it's been moving over the last year or so. And to kind of explain what I'm about to say, I still do this subconsciously, but it's so easy that you have a sequence built out, might have an email on day one, a call on day two, etc. You fire it off, and let's say you've got 5 or 6 emails in that sequence. If they never open the first one and they don't open in any of the others, then it's a bit of a pointless task even writing them in the first place. So I think the first thing to consider is really understanding what channel your particular prospect is on, and that's not necessarily easy to work out, but you want to be like trying to send them a LinkedIn, trying to email, trying to call, and understanding it's almost channel validation, saying, okay, have I got a mobile number that works? I'm going to really lean on the mobile numbers. I'm maybe going to call them more than I would, double tap them, do whatever I can to have a conversation. Or if it's a case of they are opening the email, how can I spend 20 minutes or 30 minutes writing an incredibly personalized email that's going to be really relevant to them? You've maybe like understood from the company's website what they're focusing on, different things like that, to really make sure that that's hyper personalized and hyper relevant. But like you say, Hitesh, I think the key thing really is you're spending more time on less people, but making it uber personalized and uber relevant. And I think where that becomes easier is with different tools that are out there and understanding what else that prospect has done. Maybe on your website, have they been on the website? Have they filled out a form? Have they been reading any of the content you've been putting out? And I know not everyone has this benefit, but it's that sort of stuff to understand, okay, this person came onto the website, they read one of our blogs. That's interesting. Maybe we send them a quick email to say this is my favorite part of the blog. What did you find most interesting? And just not trying to sell to them immediately, or things like they post on LinkedIn and just over the course of a couple of weeks commenting on their LinkedIn rather than just sending them a message and trying to sell to them, So I think it's going to be that hyper personalized approach, but with that sort of nurturing angle as well, and not going in as that hardcore salesperson and trying to sell to them immediately, and no email blasts either.
I think this is the biggest change I've seen is people, they're expecting you to flirt with them a little bit longer, before going into the close. And back in the day when it was just an email sequence with a couple of calls, you didn't have to do the preliminary. I don't know if I can say that for too long, it was straight to the point, or this is what we do, this is where your problem is, do you want to meet? And then as you said, 1 out of 5 times that would land a meeting. How do you build, how do you teach that? How do you teach that dance before you get into the more straight to the point conversations?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one to teach, and I think the best way to kind of illustrate it to people is to sort of say, I think for so long, rightly or wrongly, it felt like as salespeople, it was about us rather than about the prospects. And I know everyone pretends it's always about the prospects, but for a long time, it felt like you could just send a message if it was relevant, they'd say yes. And going to your point there, Mick, it's now much more about them. So I think it's about that mindset shift of when I kind of speak to new sales reps, it's like, what value can you deliver to that person? So let's say you connect with them on LinkedIn and you see that they're focusing on, let's say, I don't know, they're trying to sell, their company sells to the automotive industry. Maybe send them a case study of another company you've worked with and be like, oh, I thought you might find this interesting, or stuff that's going to give them value that isn't stuff for you, like asking for a meeting or asking for a next step or whatever it may be. And I think it's just preparing for the long game. It's really just not trying to blast out a load of volume, but saying, okay, have a target account list and say, okay, these are your top 10 accounts for this quarter. Slowly you're going to nurture them and you're going to really work through the whole account. You're going to go after 6 or 7 decision makers, whatever, and nurture them and really try and deliver them value and not think about the sale, because ultimately the meeting is going to come off the back of it by you providing value.
Yeah. And what do you think about, while we're on this topic, what do you think about the role of an SDR now and how that needs to evolve with this time as well? Because as you said, there's a huge dependency now on AE self-sourcing ops as well. Yeah. And part of the reason that's been created is because there's less activity coming in at the top of the funnel, right? And so it's like, if we can get more people doing it better, then, we can fill that up. So how do you see an SDR's role changing with an AE prospecting as well?
Yeah, and I think the key bit there is teamwork. Like I actually don't have an SDR at the moment. We don't have SDRs for like small business, you know, here at HubSpot. We're all kind of full cycle motion, and that's it. However, like when I've sort of observed how people do it upper segment, for example, in HubSpot, it's all about, it's not a case of, right, the SDR's got, you know, 1,000, you know, companies in their book of business and they're just, hate to use the word, spamming them all day long with emails and calls. I think it's sitting down with the AE going, okay, out of these 1,000, I'd love to speak to these 15 companies, and sitting down and being like, right, you know, how can we approach this account together and sort of almost, you know, increase the heat of the account by using the SDR to maybe just be there to, you know, like you say, sending them really interesting kind of bits of information to actually give them value. And then the AE maybe coming over the top of like emails, being able to really kind of work together. I think that's how it's changing. And that's kind of probably what I'd suggest any SDR out there to do at the moment is just work with your AE. I think sales is increasingly becoming like a team sport. So it's really important that you're not, you know, both prospecting the same person completely separately without any communication, just really kind of understanding what your different roles are, and being able to kind of manage it that way.
Yeah, Mick and I actually experienced that. He decided to take a meeting with someone who was prospecting Jointflows, and in between him sitting the first meeting and waiting for the second meeting, that guy was still prospecting me. So I was clearly just in a sequence or a cadence, however you want to call it. That was automated the whole time. So yeah, not a great experience. As someone who has led SDR teams, is there something to be thought about the way in which they incentivize from a comp plan perspective to be able to drive the right behaviors? Because previously it was always, you know, the number of meetings you can book, you know, you hit these thresholds typically is what you would see, and you're then incentivized based on this. And now it's moved a little bit, right? So because you can't spam as much as you said and stuff. So what should that comp plan look like now?
It's a really, I mean, that's almost the age old question, isn't it? And I have to admit, when I was at Outreach, we were very much, you know, if you book a meeting and it gets accepted by sales, you know, that is a meeting, goes against your name. You need to get 10 meetings a month, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that there is some benefits to that around, you know, I guess what an SDR might say is, I can't control what the AE does. You know, if they accept it into their pipeline, it's their responsibility. That's one school of thought. I guess probably increasingly the school of thought is an SDR's job is to really get quality pipeline. And it's around how can you incentivize that SDR to book really good meetings. Now, whether you base that on the potential size of the opportunity, whether you make the criteria by which a lead is accepted by the AE from the SDR very strict, and then it's, you know, easy to not have an argument about it. But actually, there's a third school of thought, I think, is that, and this again depends very much on the flow of your business, but and you know, the types of companies that you're targeting. But why should an SDR's job stop at that first meeting being booked? Because so often, even, you know, with smaller businesses, you're not speaking to the right person. So how can the SDR then maybe go out and help you find different people in those companies and kind of warm them up, I guess? You know, how can they help you kind of attack it from that point of view? Sorry, I know that's a very long-winded answer, but I think the way I see it going is, to an extent, you can't control what the AE does, but there should definitely be some added kickers or some added incentive to say, okay, if this deal closes, you get extra money, or, you know, a deal over a certain value, you may get extra, you know, money in a commission plan. And therefore the SDR is going to pay much more interested in keeping that deal going and helping the AE actually close that deal rather than just create it.
Yeah,
that
like
makes sense.
Having a qualitative incentive basically on top of the volume. Well, you've been managing SDRs, you're now managing closing AEs. What's the main difference between the two groups?
Yeah, it's a great question. And look, my role at HubSpot, obviously I've got the actual kind of manager as well. He does probably a lot of the more the managerial side of things. But I kind of lean in quite heavily with the coaching side of things. And I think to an extent there isn't a big difference. I think the difference is an AE's got a lot of things to do in their day. So time management is so important. That's something I really struggled with is, you know, as an SDR, all your day is prospecting. So it's relatively easy to break that down into, between 11 and 12, I'm going to do my calls, 9 to 10, I'm going to do my emails, my other tasks, etc., or my research. Whereas in AE, you've also got to run the meetings. There might be other types of follow-ups, different types of calls. So with the kind of SDR coaching, a lot of it's around mindset, and it's around those core capabilities. Like, right, let's role play cold calling until you're sick of it. Let's critique your emails until you're sick of it. Let's see how your social media strategy is kind of working on LinkedIn, etc. It's and time management a thing. It's just all about get the volume done. Like, just try and have as many conversations. Kind of just try and increase the output. Whereas I think with the AE kind of role, it's a lot about time management and how you can be most efficient in that time. It's like really making sure every day you're blocking out 2 hours to do prospecting, and if something comes about and a customer wants a call, still saying no, this is my time to prospect, I can't have a call with you right now, and setting those boundaries, because otherwise suddenly you have an hour for prospecting a day, you don't really get anything done, your pipeline's gone, and you really struggle to hit quota. So with an AE, you just have to be so laser focused on each of those different blocks and what you're doing so that you can manage it all. So I think that would be the key main differences. But I think ultimately, like going back to, I know I said it at the beginning, really most good AEs are just very, very good SDRs that can sell as well. Because if you have a big pipeline, most of your problems really disappear quite quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you're currently in the team that you sit in is more within the SMB space. How are you seeing, or what type of challenges are you seeing within the sales cycle over there? Everyone speaks about the enterprise sales process. It's gone from 12 months to 24 months. It's gone for X number of stakeholders to Y number and so forth. What are you seeing within the SMB type of space? What kind of challenges do you think are new now, in the last 12 months or so compared to previous?
Yeah, I think the main one it's, we've got these challenges, and it's not about, are we going to buy your solution to solve them? It's, are we going to do anything to solve them? It's that, it's the kind of cost benefit analysis they're doing in their heads around, okay, really interrupting the status quo to solve a challenge. So I think the big issue is around hesitation. And like you say, with small business, it's a high volume game. You need to be creating, closing really quickly. And once that create and close becomes quite lengthy, the whole motion really kind of falls apart, because you're just spending a lot of time on not a very high valuable deal. Whereas, with enterprise, you've got all year to spend time and hours to spend, because they're going to be potentially spending hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds with you, right? So I think it's making sure, like I always say, it's making sure that next step is booked in, tomorrow, the next day, just moving as quickly as that person can allow, and then doing whatever you can at the end of that process just to get it in. I think, the old sales methodology of like, right, no discounts, it's just all about selling on value, and that's great. But in today's environment, it's just about almost, without obviously just discounting to hell and back, it's about finding almost that price elasticity of demand of like, right, they got this challenge, this is how they fix it. But right now, whilst we can fix it, they're not willing to spend this amount of money trying to fix it. So realistically, can we get them to spend this amount of money fixing it? Or shall we actually just say, look, thanks for your time, don't think we're the right fit, and move on to the next one? Because, if you spend, let's say, half an hour on a stale deal that you deep down know isn't going anywhere, that's an hour that you could be spent prospecting that might give you 2 more opportunities that do, So I think that's the big challenge at the moment is trying to qualify out quickly enough, and just getting the deal done. You don't want deals hanging around your pipeline in a kind of small business motion.
Yeah. And so a lot of that's around maintaining momentum then, I guess, right? So there's that old saying, right? Time kills deals. And that's probably more applicable in this scenario than any. And so what are some of the strategies that you deploy in order to support you in keeping that momentum?
Yeah. So, and again, there's a few different ones. So I think the first one, like I mentioned, is just getting those next steps in on that call, and getting them in for tomorrow, not being like, oh, how are you looking next week? It's like, how are you doing tomorrow morning? Like, being really clear on that. The other one is a mutual evaluation plan. I'm sure this is called a few different things depending which company you work for, but after that discovery or after the demo, having a thing up and being like, right, what timelines are we moving to here? and kind of mapping out all the different things that need to happen for a decision to be made, and being really clear on those timelines and getting that commitment, from the prospect, and saying, okay, we're doing the demo on the 10th. You're gonna have a call internally on the 12th to discuss this. We're gonna catch up on the 13th. Decision's gonna be made on the 15th, and you're gonna sign by the 20th. And just having that mapped out, because once they commit to it, like, they then have to go against their word, which a lot of people don't really want to do. I think the next one is using, time pressure to close deals, and saying, look, it gets to the end of the deal, they're like, oh, it's just too expensive. Using that as part of your negotiation, is saying, okay, I can go to finance and try and get you a discount. I can't promise anything, but if I can, are you willing to sign this week? Just getting them in and just keeping really tight on those timelines. The way I just think about it is create a deal, work it as quickly as I can, try and close it, move on to the next one, and sort of start the process again. Otherwise you can get in a bit of a pickle.
Do you walk away? Sorry, what's that commit? Do you walk away when they don't maintain the timeline?
I mean,
I've been in this scenario, that's why, and I never walk away.
What's the saying? Is do as I say, not as I do, isn't it? Yeah, it's easier said than done. And I think the tricky bit with these sort of time pressure discounts is inevitably it slips into next month and they say, oh, I still want this same discount. And obviously you probably end up giving it to them anyway. None of my prospects are listening to this podcast, but it's just, you can never fully control a deal because unfortunately there's other people involved.
Yeah.
You've just got to do everything to keep the momentum going, I think.
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, we had a few. The discount has expired. I'm sorry. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. The easy thing about a big company is you can always say, well, I need to speak to my finance team, or and things like that. I guess with a smaller business, it's, as a co-founder, it's quite hard to, what finance team are you speaking to? Co-founder,
We had that on the call actually last week. It's like, let me ask my CRO. It's okay? Yeah. Oh, good. It's approved. Live.
Approved there and then on the call.
Yeah.
Brad, like I've witnessed how you manage teams and how you build that culture of sharing feedback, accepting it, implementing it. What's best practice for someone new into sales management or SDR management to create this environment really early on?
Yeah, I think, it's a really hard one, isn't it? Because I think everyone has a different style, don't they? And different styles work for kind of different people. I've always believed, I always think of sales quite similarly to like high performance sport. It's like, it's about getting the attitude right. And then all the other marginal benefits of like coaching and things like that can kind of be tweaked. So like almost thinking about it like a kind of racing team or anything like that. So I think it's about building the energy, making sure that it's an open door to like talk to your manager about anything you need to, and creating an environment where, this is different whether it's an SDR and AE type environment, but, making it fun, having games, having competitions, like just doing things that are going to keep the energy high. Like, I know what it's like, when you're having a tough month and no one's picking up the phone as an SDR and you can't book any meetings and you're almost pulling your hair out. Whereas if you can kind of circuit break that and say, look, guys, we're going to play a game now. We're going to get 10 meetings this week. And once we get to 10, or if we get to 10 by the end of tomorrow, like we're going out for drinks or whatever it may be, everyone's like rallies around that. And so I think that's just be yourself. And that's kind of how I like to operate, like have a bit of fun. And, sales can be serious, but it's a competitive type environment, a sport. So, being able to kind of create an environment that nurtures that and people can be themselves, I think can be really key.
Yeah. And perhaps last question from you, but you've probably seen some of the best management styles like Tom Castley, KK, Caitlin, like really like top tier. And you've probably witnessed, and I was probably with you at that time.
And yours, Mick, as well.
Oh, thank you, man. I was gonna put myself in the second group, but I'll take it. Some of the worst management. Yeah, and the line is quite fine. It's easy to move from really good
Yeah.
very bad really quickly. So how do you maintain good management throughout?
Yeah, it's a really great question. And I think it comes down to, and this isn't an exhaustive list, but as a rep, in terms of what I want from a manager, and what I see is, and this again, this is dependent on a big company or a small company, but in my opinion, the manager's job is to protect you from the bullshit that's happening above them. Every company has it, you know, whether it's whatever thing they're trying to implement, it's protecting you from that and not letting that noise kind of interrupt your day to day. The second thing the manager's job is to provide the easiest and the best way for you to basically achieve the highest amount that you can, right? It's removing the friction ultimately. And I think the third one is it kind of is knowing what you're getting on the tin. Like you say, Mick, like KK, Tom, yourself, you're great, 3 different styles of management. But the thing is that everyone they joined your team, they know exactly what you are. And I think that's the key, isn't it? It's like some managers, probably like me, I'm very much more jovial. People can have a bit of a joke. I don't take things too seriously. That's fine. But if I then one day just started to like flip on people and like tell them off for being jovial, that would be an example, I think, of like bad management. So I think it's just sticking to the expectation you're setting. And yeah, just being fair. Like, I know that's such a generic word, but like realistically, all people want is fairness. Just treat other people how you'd want to be treated yourself. Be consistent, and don't start just go having these sort of mental episodes and confusing people, because it just puts a bad taste in their mouth, I think.
That's true. That's how you manage children as well. You know, you have to stay consistent with your behavior, and if you switch one time, it's just you lose credibility. They don't
lose all respect.
Yeah, like, you know, a good example might be, let's say you're managing a team, someone goes on a big night out and they look a bit worse for wear the next day. Like, you know, if they've been working hard for the other 29 days in the month, like, is that really a big deal? Like, my opinion is like, no. But if they then do that 3 times a week and start performing badly, then that's a problem. So I'd expect it to be treated fairly, that I could probably have one big night out a week and a month and not be
a day.
week.
Let me correct myself real quick.
I correct myself on that one. You know what I mean? So, but it's those managers that would kick off on that, and it's just like, you know, this person's performing well, like they're doing their job. You know, why have a go at them? It's, you know, for that, it's just creating friction that doesn't need to happen. I feel like that's similar to how you approach life, Mick.
Yeah, a night out a day keeps the doctor away.
You don't drink anymore, do you, Mick?
Well, I do drink again.
What?
Yeah. I go from, I did veganism, and then I stopped.
I remember
coffee.
the vegan era. Vegan Mick.
I'm not very consistent with these kind of things.
I remember no coffee Mick.
No coffee Mick's not good.
Yeah.
No coffee Mick used to eat an apple instead of a coffee. Where it'd be like, you want to go get a coffee? He'd be like, no, I can have an apple though. It does the same thing. And I think he quickly realized it didn't. And so he no longer has the apples. Awesome, Brad. It's been great having you on. I think we're almost out of time, but we do have a wrap-up question, which we consistently ask all our guests. And the question is, in your whole career to date, which is quite illustrious, what is your best memory and why?
Well, my answer to this is going to be for all the wrong reasons, but I'm going to be authentic, as I've just told everyone that's how they should be. Best moment in my career so far. Yeah, I think I can say this on a podcast. I'm sure it's fine. It's been a long time. It's basically in the early days. In the early days of outreach. So we used to be in this office in Fora before Mick joined. It was a lovely office, but it was very tiny. And those are kind of the heydays of SDRing, and if only days like that still, where, you know, you almost picked up the phone 3 times in a day and you booked 3 meetings type thing. Everyone wanted a meeting, and so we hit Sam Smith and my manager at the time, Caitlin, sort of said, okay, we'll go out for lunch for the whole team, and we went to Gloria's. I don't know if you've ever been in Shoreditch. It's part of the Circolo Popolare group.
Okay.
Yeah. anyway, and so we had a relatively booze-filled lunch, shall we say, and we kind of revolted and decided to not come back, in the afternoon, much to Caitlin's disgust. Caitlin's listening, I'm sorry again, but and it happened to be April Fool's the next day, and we may or may not, again, I can't confirm or deny this, gone back to the office and had a few drinks on the balcony until relatively late in the evening, or early in the morning, whichever way you want to look at it. And we came in the next day, and Caitlin was like, "You do realize there's CCTV on the balcony?" real just absolutely, our faces dropped. And then she said, "Just joking, it's April Fool's." In terms of roller coaster of emotions, yeah, probably.
That's
amazing.
I know the story. I like it.
It's good. I'm sure it's changed a bit over time.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll go with that one.
Yeah. That's one of your one nights out a week, I guess.
Month.
Awesome. Well, Brad, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. This has been the Revenue Revolution podcast, sponsored by Jointflows. Until next time, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. It was a pleasure.